Okay, we are going to cover something. I'm probably going to do more than one video today because I've got quite a few things that I'm trying to get out because I've been studying a good bit on this whole conversation with this constitutional thing. I want to first address where I ended up with the Juan Galt guy, and I'm still talking to him. Hopefully, he's not too upset with me to continue to have conversations. And I'm also not saying that I'm 100% that I'm correct on what I'm about to say. I feel much better today on my position. I'm glad that I had the conversations with Juan Galt because it's kind of made me dig a little bit deeper into what I've been looking at. But I think in the end, I am in disagreement with him, not on a personal level, but just on, some of the contextual stuff, and time will tell, how dumb I am. But I've run across a couple people, and I'm just going to throw this out there that I respect what they're doing. I'm not 100% yet behind what they're doing, but they brought up some things that actually were pretty interesting. And I have to get in here to my video section because I can't remember. Their name is Jack and Margie. I can't remember their last name, but there's a lot of videos and stuff out there. In fact, if you're interested, this is their website is citizens of the American Constitution.net. It's kind of down at the moment. It's been down for a few weeks. They're older, and I'm not sure how much they know about the websites and how to fix whatever their problem is. But I've seen them on a lot of other podcasters' videos lately, and so I've been watching it, and I'm going to cover some of the aspects of what they're saying that I disagree with, but not in this video. I'm going to stick this video to some interesting things that some of which I was already aware of, but they've kind of put it in a different light. The first thing is Juan Galt, when I was having a conversation with him, told me that the constitutional amendments, the Bill of Rights, were not instituted in all of the different states. That like the 7th Amendment, the 6th Amendment, those things don't exist in some of the states. Certain elements of them may exist in the states, but not all the states. And so I kind of want to back up a little bit and ask what the federal Constitution is. So the federal Constitution is what we've said it is. It's a federal document, and it was put in place to form the federal government, to list out the things that it was going to be in control of, and it's kind of like this pact. But it's actually a little bit more than that, because part of the Constitution is the forming of the Union. It's actually the states united, which are referred to as the United States inside of the Constitution. But the states united, got together, they formed this federal government, and then they all signed on to this compact, this treaty, or whatever you want to call it. They all signed on to it to create this new country that we now live in. So when you say that the states are not obligated by that document, it's not true. They are the ones that created the document, and they are obligated to the things that are in the document. Now, obviously, if it's something specific to the federal government, then they're not obligated to that, but they are restricted by that Constitution in certain ways, and that's what I wanted to kind of get into. So the first topic is saying that the states don't have to abide by the Bill of Rights that are in the Constitution. is that true or is that not true? And to answer that question, I'm going to jump into the Constitution section, and we're going to go down here to Article 6. And I want to look specifically at what it says. Now, the first thing is that all debts, contracts, and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. No big deal. This is a key element here. This Constitution, so it's talking about the federal Constitution, and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof. So what that means is that laws that get passed by the federal government in pursuance of the Constitution, the things that the Constitution gives them the power to regulate and the power to do things, all of those laws and all the treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States or the States United shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So this is called the Supremacy Clause. This is what gives the federal government the ability to pass certain laws that all the states have to abide by. But those laws have to be in pursuance of things that are in the Constitution. They can't just be any willy-nilly thing that the federal government wants to go pass. So for those of you that believe the federal government passes a law or the president passes a presidential amendment, that those things are law to all of us in the several states, this is not true. But the things that they pass in relation to the Constitution itself, those are. But the big point here is that it says, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. So the things that are in the Constitution itself, and any laws and treaties are the law of the land. Everything follows that premise. So the Bill of Rights are part of the Constitution. They're amendments to the Constitution, and therefore the states do have to respect those Bill of Rights. So they can pass their own version of it. They can do whatever they want to at the at the state level, but they have to abide by those constitutional amendments. They can't just say, "Oh, well, your Fourth Amendment right doesn't exist in the state because we've rewritten it." That's not the way it works. They are restricted by the Constitution, and they have to abide by the Constitution itself. Now, the other thing that I want to mention here is, and this is a key element that I've missed. This is something that the two people I was talking about earlier brought up. Is it says the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, all the judges and police, the sheriffs and all those, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. Okay, so that means that the oath of office that all of these people have signed in order to gain access to that office, it is restricting them or it is forcing them to support the Constitution, which means that everything that they do should be bound by whether or not that action is constitutional or not. That is their oath of office. Now, the next step to this is I want to go to, let me think how we're going to do this. Let's go to we'll start with the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment. You'll notice that one of the things in the Bill of Rights in the First Amendment is to petition the government for redress of grievances. This is a right that we have, that we can petition the government for redress of grievances, which means we can write them a letter, we can have a conversation with them and tell them what our problem is, and the government has to respond to that grievance. They can't ignore you. We have a right to be able to petition them for grievance. I just want to mention that because it will come into play here in just a moment. So let's take a look, and this is an amendment that I personally have issue with, is the 14th Amendment. We've discussed this earlier. Well, this is an aspect of this whole Constitution that I know, but is something that we need to mention, is that the Constitution cannot contain any amendments that are going to contradict something that is in the Constitution. A law that the federal government passes that violates the Constitution is not a lawful law. It's void. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind. So the 14th Amendment, what the federal government wants you to believe is that we are all state or federal citizens. By birth, we are all federal citizens. And the clause that they use to do this, it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Well, here is the problem that I have with this is that, first of all, the subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and I've had conversations with Juan about this, is why do they have that in there? Like if the idea here is that every single person born in the United States, in the continental United States, is a federal citizen, then why did they put in there and subject to the jurisdiction thereof? Because it doesn't make any sense, because there is no example of any type of person. You're either born in the United States, in the continental United States, and they're going to make you a federal citizen, or you're not. And so there's been, he threw out, like a diplomat. A diplomat doesn't pledge allegiance to the United States, and therefore, when their kids are born here, they're not United States citizens. But I would argue that he's incorrect on that, because I will guarantee you that those kids get a United States birth certificate. Now, my response to him, in addition to what I just said, my response to him is, well, no, wait a minute. All these Mexicans and Chinese and all these people coming across our border, Haitians and everybody else, they're coming across our border. They aren't pledging allegiance to our country either. And therefore, if that is the premise that you're going to have, then none of these people could possibly be citizens of our country, because they didn't pledge allegiance to our country either. Now, the reason that I have a problem with this is because I have a problem with the federal government assuming control of my life by just mandating that I'm a federal citizen so that they can then have jurisdiction over me. And I liken it to this. Let's pretend that Alabama decides that they're just going to make everybody in the country an Alabama citizen so that they can charge income taxes to all of the people in the whole country. Well, under the guise of the assumption that that's what this amendment is doing, well, it's no different. If the federal government can go and do it, why can't Alabama do it? And so I believe that this particular amendment has one of two options. Either this amendment is saying what I had said earlier about the amendment, is that under the jurisdiction thereof means that you have to be born in a federal area, at which point it would not be unconstitutional because they can do whatever they want inside of the federal areas, or this particular section of the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional. It's void. So the fact that it has not been removed from the Constitution would make me believe that what they are actually saying is what I was saying all along, that you have to be born in a federal area in order to be considered a 14th Amendment citizen. Because I never signed a contract. I don't have any proof that I am actually a 14th Amendment citizen, other than I have a state birth certificate that proves I'm a United States of America, a citizen of Georgia. I don't have anything showing that I'm a federal citizen. And so I still stick by the fact that this 14th Amendment cannot apply to me, because I didn't ask for it. They don't have the power. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives them the power to just suck up every citizen in the country. And so it has to be that it's only talking about District of Columbia people or federal area people born in the federal areas. All right. Now we're going to start getting interesting. And this is something that, again, was brought up by Maggie and her husband. So 14th Amendment, let's look at Section 3, because it's something so we know earlier from the Constitution that all the senators, the sheriffs, in fact, all the sheriff's deputies, the judges, attorney, the prosecutor, chief prosecutor, all those people, Fannie Mae, they all sign an oath of office. And that oath of office is the same oath of office that it was talking about in the Constitution. Therefore, every single one of these people have signed an oath of office that says that they have to support the Constitution. Well, let's look at what Section 3 says about that oath, because this was added after the Civil War, or the War of Northern Aggression, whatever you want to call it. It was added after the Civil War, and this is what it says. It says, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or an elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath, all of these people have taken an oath, as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislator, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same. In other words, they are, so we're not talking about insurrection, and this is something that I have an issue with the Trump case, is they're trying to say that he engaged in insurrection, but they're not defining insurrection as to what it actually says. This clause in the 14th Amendment says engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution, against the same. So what this is saying is that every single one of these people that are in office, or at least this is what I believe and what other people believe, these people that are in office have all done unconstitutional things. Like for example, the Constitution specifically says that no state in the Union will accept anything but gold and silver coin for the removal of debt. Yet they force us to use Federal Reserve notes, which are not money. They're not gold and silver, and they're not represented by anything. They're literally poofed into air. Everybody says they'd like to have a money tree. Well, the federal government has a money tree. It's called the Federal Reserve, which is a private company that prints their money up out of thin air. So that act is unconstitutional. Therefore, all of our state legislators that allow that to continue are insurrecting against the Constitution. They're fighting against the very thing that they took an oath to defend. So that's an interesting thing. The next thing is down here on Section 4. It says, it mentions the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including the debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for the services in suppressing the insurrection or rebellion shall not be questioned. So they have to pay all of their debts, even though, whatever happened after it's they have to pay their debts. But it says, but neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in the aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim of the loss of emancipation of a slave, but all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. Well, consider this. Section 3 says that no person can hold an office if they have rebelled against the United States, against the Constitution of the United States. And so Section 4 says that the state nor the United States is to pay any debt or obligation if they have aided in insurrection. So we can hash this out, for a while probably. But on the surface, it looks like the 14th Amendment actually has a clause in here that says that if they do not abide by the Constitution and they're insurrecting against that Constitution, then they are guilty of treason, of treason or insurrection, actually insurrection or rebellion. So it's an interesting take. It's probably the coolest thing that I've found here lately. So again, we have a problem with this 14th Amendment, with this first clause, if they are talking about the entire country. If they're only talking about the federal areas, then it's perfectly okay. And the fact that it's still here, I would say it must be that must be what it's talking about. So the next thing that I want to look at is the 16th Amendment. So the 16th Amendment supposedly gave Congress or the federal government the ability to directly tax our income. Now, income is your property. And think about it this way. Income doesn't exist to me for a person, because a person is not making a profit. A person, you come to work, you provide your labor and your skill to perform some function, and then you are compensated for that skill in money is what you're supposed to be compensated for. Or maybe somebody gives you a pig for your hard work. It doesn't matter, but it's compensated equally. So if I give you X amount of labor, then you give me X amount of something that's worth something. The problem that we have in our country is that the dollar is not worth anything. It is literally a piece of paper with no backing whatsoever. The only thing that keeps the dollar in business is that we keep using it. That's it. There's nothing behind it at all. And so what this essentially means is that I am providing labor to my company, or my employees are providing labor to me, but I'm not compensating them in anything worth any value. I'm giving them a debt note that the Federal Reserve forces me to give to these people. In fact, they'll put me in jail, and they have put people in jail for trying to use gold to pay the employees, because it bypasses their scam. And so they're forcing me at gunpoint to pay my employees with this fake money, this paper, and I'm not being reimbursed. I'm not being given anything. Well, the 16th Amendment supposedly is what gave them this ability. It says the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes. Again, it doesn't say on property. It says on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states and without regard to the census and enumeration. Well, here's a problem with this entire thing. The Constitution cannot contain anything in it that contradicts some other part of the Constitution. If it did, it would be void. It would be unconstitutional. So if we go back over here and take a look at our, let's see, it would be, is it limitations? So in the limitations, Article 1, Section 9, it says, no capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein directed to be taken. Now, I just want to point out something. It says no capitation or direct tax shall be laid. It doesn't say anything about what the tax is on. It just says you can't tax something unless you do it by, you can't directly tax something unless you do it by enumeration, by the census. The problem that we have now is we have a conflict. We have the 16th Amendment that's saying they can do one thing, and then the 4th Amendment, or the Article 1, Section 9, Paragraph 4, that says that they can't do it. Well, that means the 16th Amendment is void. But again, it's still sitting there. And so this begs us to go and reevaluate what this is actually saying. Can they tax our incomes? Well, this all depends on, one, what income is. And the courts have ruled that income, we don't know. It hasn't been defined. They did not define it in this statement. And so we don't know what it is. And that the IRS nor the legislation can fix it. They can't go define it. They've already passed the amendment, and the only way they can fix this now is to repeal this amendment and pass a new one. They're not going to do that because this amendment never got amended anyway, and it's all a bunch of bullshit, but we won't go down that road. So we have a conflict here between the Constitution, and the only way to resolve that conflict is to either assume this is talking about something completely different or repeal it because it's void. They didn't repeal it. The courts are wonderful about redefining what the Senate screws up. And so instead of repealing it and just saying, hey, this is unconstitutional, they just redefine it to mean something different so that it can stay in there, but it doesn't have the meaning that you think it does, hoping later on that we're all going to forget what they said the meaning of it was, and they can go back to what they were trying to play, the game they were trying to play originally. I mean, it's this whole thing, all these people should go to jail. I mean, every one of them, to me, are trying to circumvent our Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, period, full stop. So now that we have the 16th Amendment and we've kind of decided that it's in there, so it must somehow have been reworded. Well, what the courts decided was that the 16th Amendment didn't actually add any new powers of taxation to the federal government. It's further specifying something, but it actually doesn't apply to, direct tax. It's something else. They don't really tell us what it is, but it's something else. Now the IRS uses this to say it's taxes against our income, but the Supreme Court has ruled that it actually didn't add any new taxing clauses, which means that it can't do anything different than what they were already doing. Now, Juan, his response to me when I brought this up was, well, that's true. It doesn't add any new taxing powers because they always had the ability to tax your income. Well, that's just not true, because the Article 1, Section 9 clearly says they cannot directly tax my income. So, they can't directly tax anything for that matter. It doesn't even matter about income. It's just they can't tax anything, which would kind of bring up another question, wouldn't it? If they can tax my income, why can't, if they've always had that power, then why can't they tax everything? I mean, they should be able to just tax my land, tax everything. But the answer is they can't, never could, never will, because they never had that power. The 16th Amendment didn't give them some new power because they can't give themselves power. The Constitution has enumerated the things that they have control over, and that is not one of them. Just the same as they don't have the power to make all of us federal citizens. They would love for us to all be federal citizens because then they have total control over us, but they can't do it. And so that's another restriction that we have. So I think that covers the brunt of the situation. We've got the Constitution. There's other parts of the Constitution that support this premise, but the Constitution clearly is the supreme law of the land. All of the states clearly signed on to it. All of the legislators, judicial officers, the attorneys, all of these people have signed an oath of office that have public offices. They've all signed an oath of office. And the 14th Amendment clearly says that if they violate that oath of office, then they can't hold any position inside of the government. They have to leave. So, and we know that every single one of them have violated their oath of office. So the question then becomes, what are we going to do about it? And that's something that I'm currently researching. The two people that I was talking about actually said they have a process for how to go about dealing with it, but it's a very lengthy set of videos that I'm having to go through. So I've got to go and finish those videos before I can go any further on any kind of a resolution. But right now, it is worth noting that we do, in fact, have all of our amendment rights. We do have a supreme law of the land. All the states are obligated to follow the Constitution, whether they want to or not. And all of the states are in default or in to me, treason, because they're all actively fighting against the Constitution. So interesting bit of information. Where we go with this from here, nobody knows, but we're going to keep studying and see where we end up.